You guys are currently propped up on a plant, and it is also like almost mid-January, and I still have not taken down my Christmas tree with one ornament on it. So I'm clearly thriving. But today I thought I would do a video on how to deal with a harder rotation, whether you're in medical school or in residency. There are some rotations that are notoriously more difficult than others. And in my residency and in a lot of urology residencies, if you don't know, I'm a first-year urology resident. A lot of urology residencies across the country, we do 6 months of general surgery along with 6 months of urology in our first year. And for our general surgery block, one of the more notorious harder blocks is plastic surgery, which I am currently on now. And it's just notoriously harder because you have a lot more patients. Patients are sometimes more sick. You're doing a lot of takebacks to the OR, and the schedule can be a little bit hectic and longer hours. So it's just commonly known as like one of the harder rotations. And I thought I would share some tips on how to deal with a harder rotation and how to quote unquote get through it. So I hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump right in. I think one of the hardest parts, or the parts that makes a hard rotation hard, is kind of the build up to it. And I know for me on plastic surgery, I was really apprehensive about the month because I had heard it was really hard. And so I was kind of like not dreading it, but kind of nervous about starting it and apprehensive about what my life would be like on it, and it really has not been that bad. But I would say trying not to freak out about it in the time leading up to it. I try to treat everything like a learning opportunity. So my whole mindset going into it is, okay, this may be harder than what I'm used to. This may be more work, more time. I may be running around more, but I'm learning valuable skills that I will carry with me, and I will get comfortable with things that are useful down in residency. So for us, like in plastic surgery, we do a lot of wound vacs, dressing changes, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why it's one of our 6-month general surgery rotations, and it is so helpful. I feel I had never really had much experience with wound vacs or dressing changes, and I feel so much more comfortable now. Like I could handle a pretty difficult wound vac probably now, after doing this rotation. I mean, I'm only like halfway through, but after just spending a couple weeks on this rotation, I feel way more comfortable with wound vacs, and that's why we do this, and that's why we do these more difficult rotations or these different rotations to get those skills. So instead of building it up in your mind and freaking out about it, I would say treating everything like a learning opportunity, focusing on what you can get out of the rotation versus like dreading that you're going to be working really hard. Focusing on what you can get out of it is really important. In terms of rotations that do take more time or rotations that you don't like, I always think having something to look forward to at the end of the rotation makes it all kind of worth it. You're building towards something. So I ended up buying myself like a nice dress as kind of like a reward for getting through a more difficult rotation. And I was also put on a different rotation over the holiday schedule, which I was really having trouble with. And it didn't end up being that bad again, but it's all the build up. But anyway, as a reward for doing that and for doing one of our harder rotations, I bought myself a dress. And I know that's not probably the best way to cope with things, but it just makes me feel good and makes me feel happy. So doing something like that kind of makes me think fondly on the rotation and makes me kind of excited to like each day, So yeah, I always just find that kind of helps me. Or it doesn't even have to be that. It can be like taking yourself out for a nice meal, or just doing like booking a trip that you want to book or something like that, just to like give yourself something to look forward to. It makes each day go by better. The other super important thing when you're on a harder rotation is bonding with the people you're working with. For me, like, I love my job, and the best part about being a doctor, and I think a lot of people will tell you this, is the people that you get to spend time with. The job itself is great and you get to do really cool, exciting things, but the people make the job what it is. And on every rotation, like you just have to bond with the people you're with and joke around with them. Like I have such a good relationship with my co-intern on this rotation. We text all the time. The other team members, we text constantly. Like we had a nice little appreciation thread on Friday being like, we know this has been a hard week. Thank you guys for all of your work. Like, we couldn't do this without you. And it was just such a nice vibe to have. And that's so important. And as an intern, you may feel like you don't have a say in that vibe, but you really do. Just your attitude in that situation can make a huge difference. So I try to do this for everything, but try to remain like as positive and as upbeat and like crack jokes when it's appropriate. Obviously working hard, but the attitude around everything is so important. And then especially as you kind of move up, as you get higher and higher, your attitude sets the tone for the whole team. And so I really will want to remember that as I get higher, and maybe you get more responsibilities, so the days get more stressful, but your attitude can like make or break a team. And I think that's so important to remember. So having a great team and a great attitude takes these harder rotations and makes them really, really fun. So the next piece of advice I have is cut out kind of the noise in your life that is non-productive time, right? So that means meal prepping. If you don't, like for me, I hate cooking, right? And I hate preparing meals. So either just like taking that out and meal prepping, or paying the extra bit of money to order in food, or just being okay with like frozen food and buying all my groceries the week before helps me when I'm home after a long day, not dreading having to cook. Letting things fly by the wayside. Like, I just cleaned yesterday and I hadn't cleaned my house in like 2 weeks, and just being okay with not everything being perfect, and being a little more flexible in your personal life when you've had a busier week, and don't feel like you have to push yourself to keep up with cleaning and cooking and texting all your friends and seeing your family and this and that. Just taking that month to yourself if it is a harder rotation, and realizing that you can catch up on that stuff next month, but don't push yourself too hard. But then again, if you have to make time for what brings you joy, like for me, exercising is super important, and so I will still take that time to exercise like 3 to 4 times a week and do the bike or do bar or something, because that's what like keeps me going and keeps me happy. The next thing that is really important for a harder rotation, and again, it kind of depends on the rotation and your role, but finding a way to keep organized, to keep everything straight on these kind of busier rotations is, I've found, really, really important. And this is what the person who was like signing out the service to us was saying. Like, on plastic surgery, a lot of what we have to do is post surgeries, because a lot of these patients have to go back to the OR every 2 days if they're wound debridements or, other stuff. Closures, and so they have to go back to the OR very often. And so just keeping like a good system for like who you have to post to the OR that day, who you have to consent, who you have to pre-op, what notes you have to do, what consults you have to see, and you get a ton of pages. So like what pages you've gotten, what pages you've returned, just having a good system in place and kind of creating that even before you get on the service is really important, because it helps you not feel overwhelmed when you do have 5 million things on your to-do list. But if you have an organized process of how you're going to do it, and say you have to go consent a person on floor 5, but you also know that you have a consent on, if you're organized and you have a consent on floor 4 and floor 3, instead of running up from ground to 5 and then you're like, oh, I have to consent someone on 4, and running from ground to 4, like, it saves you time. And you also have like everything you need printed out, so you're ready to go. It is so helpful for these busier, harder rotations, and I think that that's something that you can learn on these harder rotations and carry forward with you, even on rotations that aren't as busy. Just having an organization system so you don't miss everything and you feel confident in what you've done and what you haven't done makes a world of difference. And finally, the last thing I will say is sometimes you just need to complain, and I understand that. Everyone understands that. Misery loves company. So don't feel bad about venting, because sometimes you can feel a lot better about it. You can commiserate with your co-residents, and it just makes you feel a lot better, and then you can move on. I think there's a thought process that you just accept everything and move forward, but sometimes complaining makes you feel better. And I think whatever makes you feel better, if you're having a rough time, you should do. So don't be ashamed about complaining, or just kind of like having a vent sesh and then getting over it. Like, I wouldn't say all the time, obviously, and my big thing is keeping a positive attitude, but sometimes you do have to complain. Like, one time I'll just call my mom and be like, I had a really rough day today, here's what happened. And it makes you feel better, and just getting that reassurance from someone else, even someone who doesn't really know medicine, like my parents. Just nice to complain sometimes. So I don't think you should feel ashamed or feel like that's not something you're able to do, as long as you try to keep a positive attitude as much as possible. That's the best. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave your suggestions down below for ways to deal with a difficult rotation or other videos you want to see. I really want to listen to you guys and what content I put out, and I'm excited to see what the year ahead brings. So please don't forget to subscribe. That would mean so much to me, and I will see you next time. Bye.